For PMP aspirants, understanding the relationship between SIPOC and the 7 basic quality tools is critical. These are not isolated techniques, they follow a logical sequence. SIPOC defines the boundaries, while the 7 tools drive analytical behavior. Frame first, analyze second.
The 7 quality tools. This is a proven set of super simple visual aids designed to help anyone, and I mean anyone, break down a problem and actually solve it for good.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll get the big picture of what this toolkit is all about. Then, we're going to group the tools by their job. First up, organizing all that messy data. Then, we'll map out how things are actually working. And finally, we'll play detective and find the real causes. It all builds on itself, so you'll see how it all clicks together by the end. And here is the absolute key. You do not need to be a statistician or a data scientist to use these things. Their real power is in how simple they are. They're all visual. They turn that confusing jumble of numbers, opinions, and gut feelings into a clear picture you can actually do something about.
So, where do we start? Well, with any problem, the very first step is just getting the facts straight. This first batch of tools is all about helping us grab that raw information and put it into a picture that actually makes sense. And first up is the good old check sheet. Seriously, think of it as just a smart tally sheet. So instead of saying, we get a ton of customer complaints, you can use this to track exactly what kind of complaints, on what day, and even at what time. It's that first crucial step from a vague feeling to cold, hard facts.
Okay, so you've used your check sheet. You've got a whole list of numbers. Now what? Now you turn it into a histogram. This is just a bar graph, but it instantly shows you the shape of your data. Are all the issues clustered at a certain time of day? Is everything spread out? A simple picture like this can show you patterns that a list of numbers never will.
Now this next one, is a total game changer. It's the Pareto chart. It's built on that famous 80-20 rule, which is this wild idea that in most cases, something like 80% of your problems come from just 20% of the causes. This chart helps you find that vital few so you can stop wasting your time on everything else.
And boom, this just says it all, doesn't it? Look at those 2 tall bars on the left. That's it. That's your 20%. They're causing most of the headache. So instead of trying to fix 10 different things, you focus all your energy right there. It is the absolute definition of working smarter, not harder.
All right, so we figured out what the biggest problems are. The next obvious question is, where are they happening? This next set of tools helps us draw a map of the system so we can see how everything actually works, or doesn't work.
And that brings us to the flowchart. It's basically a roadmap. By drawing out every single step, every decision, every handoff, you make this invisible process visible. And all of a sudden, you can see exactly where the bottlenecks are, where things get confusing, or where steps are just plain unnecessary.
I mean, look at this simple one here. You can trace the whole journey from the beginning to the end. And that little diamond shape, the decision point, that's so important. A flowchart gets your whole team to agree on what's really happening, not just what they think is happening. It creates a shared truth. Now, a control chart, think of this like a heartbeat monitor for your process. It plots data over time, and it shows you what's normal, expected variation, and what's a special cause, a real signal that something has gone wrong and you need to go investigate right now.
So we've organized our data, we've mapped our process, now it's time to put on our detective hats. This last group of tools is all about investigation, about drilling down and asking why until we find the actual root cause of the problem.
This thing is a cause and effect diagram, but let's be honest, everyone calls it a fishbone diagram. You can see why. It's an amazing tool for a structured brainstorm. The head of the fish is your problem, and you and your team fill out the bones with every single possible cause you can think of. It stops you from jumping to the first easy answer.
And to make that brainstorming even better, the fishbone often uses these standard categories as the main bones. This is such a great starting point. It forces your team to think about everything. Could it be a people issue, a problem with our methods, the machines, the materials? You get the idea. It makes sure you don't miss an entire area of possibilities.
And finally, we've got the scatter diagram. This one is all about testing a hunch. Let's say you think that the hotter it gets in the warehouse, the more product defects you have. Well, you plot both of those things on this graph. If the dots start to form a clear line or a curve, you've probably found a real relationship that's worth looking into.
And that's it. That's the whole set. From a simple tally sheet all the way to a relationship graph, you are now officially equipped with this incredibly versatile toolkit.
And these tools aren't just for some factory floor. They're a whole system for bringing clarity to any confusing situation.
So let's just run through them one more time by their job, right? To gather and see your data, you've got the check sheet, histogram, and Pareto chart. To understand your process, you pull out the flow chart and the control chart. And to dig for the root cause, you use the cause and effect diagram and the scatter diagram. See, each one has its place.
So what's the real takeaway here? It's this. These tools give you a structured way to turn total chaos into real clarity. They help you move from just reacting to problems to actually getting ahead of them, making real decisions based on data, not just gut feelings.
Look, this isn't just some abstract theory. This is a practical, hands-on skill. So the real question for you is, now that you've got the toolkit, what tangled, messy, overwhelming problem in your world are you going to start to unravel first?
Walk through a quick example from a world where these tools are an absolute must-have: procurement and supply. So, let's say your team needs new laptops. A SIPOC map makes the scope crystal clear right away. Your suppliers, the IT vendor, and the finance department. The inputs, a laptop request, and budget approval. The process, at a high level, is just order laptop process. The outputs are the new laptops all configured. And the customers are the team member who needs it and the IT support team. See? Now everyone knows exactly what we're talking about. And this is where the partnership just clicks into place. The SIPOC has defined our playground, that one little P box. Now that the scope is locked, we can grab our other tool and zoom right in to see what's actually going on in there. A flowchart would map out every single little step. Does the request need a manager's approval? That's a decision diamond. Is the right laptop even in stock? Another decision. Submitting the PO is an activity. By mapping all this, you can suddenly see where things get stuck. You can spot the bottlenecks. Is that approval process taking way too long? The flowchart is what shows you the truth.
SIPOC and flowcharts are not alternatives. They are sequential complements, used first to define and then to analyze a process. SIPOC is a process framing tool. It provides a high-level view. It defines scope. It identifies suppliers and customers. It clarifies inputs and outputs. In simple terms, SIPOC tells us where the process begins and where it ends. A flowchart, in contrast, is a process mapping tool. It shows how the process actually works, step by step, including decisions and sequences. So the distinction is clear. SIPOC focuses on boundary and scope clarity. Flowcharts focus on behavior within those boundaries. Many learners confuse the two. They assume they are different drawings of the same idea. They are not. SIPOC defines the territory. Flowcharts reveal the roads inside it. Frame first. Analyze second. From a PMP exam perspective, the signal is straightforward. Choose SIPOC when the question emphasizes defining or scoping. Choose flowcharts when the focus shifts to analyzing steps or identifying bottlenecks. Understanding this distinction makes quality management questions much easier to interpret.
A SIPOC is a boundary map. It draws a fence around your process. It tells everyone, hey, this is our territory, this is where it starts, and this is where it stops. A flowchart, on the other hand, that's a behavior map. It shows you what's actually happening inside that fence.
Let's look a little closer at the SIPOC. The name itself is actually an acronym: suppliers, inputs, process, outputs, and customers. And here's the clue. The process itself is just one of those 5 pieces. A SIPOC gives you that 30,000-foot view. It's all about getting everyone in the room to nod their heads and agree on the scope of what you're even talking about.
And then you've got the flowchart. This is where you zoom all the way in. This is the street-level view. We're talking every single action, every decision point, the little diamonds with yes or no paths, every possible detour. A flowchart isn't about the big picture scope. It's about the nitty-gritty, step-by-step reality of how the work actually gets done.
Now this table really lays it all out, but let's just focus on a couple of key rows that tell the whole story. See there under focus? A SIPOC is all about the who and what. Who gives us stuff and what do we give to whom? But the flowchart, that is all about the how. And check out when used. You use a SIPOC before you even start analyzing, just to agree on the playing field. You use a flowchart during the analysis to actually find the problems. See? Totally different jobs for different moments.
So after seeing a comparison like that, you might be thinking you have to choose a side, right? Team SIPOC or Team Flowchart. But here's the real aha moment. They're not in competition at all. In fact, it's the exact opposite.
Listen to that phrase, sequential complements. That means they're literally designed to be used together, one right after the other, to create a full, complete understanding of a process.
Think of it like this. The SIPOC is like drawing the borders of a country on a map. The whole team gets together and says, okay, we all agree, this is the country we are focused on. Simple as that. Then, the flowchart, that's the detailed roadmap you create inside that country, showing all the cities, the highways, and every single intersection. You absolutely need to agree on the borders before you can start mapping the roads within it.
All right, that's all great in theory, right? But how does this actually translate into action? How do you use this knowledge to run your projects better, or maybe just ace that exam question?
Okay, here it is. The correct professional sequence. You always start with SIPOC. I'm going to say that again, always. Its entire reason for existing is to get your team aligned on the scope and to stop that dreaded project killer, scope creep. You know what I'm talking about? The thing that blows up budgets and timelines. Only once everybody agrees on the what and who, only then do you have permission to dive into the messy details of how with a flowchart. So, how do you know which one to reach for? Well, in the real world, and especially on certification exams, it's all about looking for the signals. There are trigger words that basically scream at you which tool is needed. So listen for these keywords. If the objective in the meeting or the question on the test uses words like define, scope, or agree, your brain should immediately fire off SIPOC. But if you see words like analyze, diagnose, improve, or if you're on the hunt for a root cause of a problem, like a frustrating bottleneck, well, that is a job that requires the detailed, surgical precision of a flowchart.
Okay, let's bring this all home. To really lock this in and give you a simple, powerful way to remember the difference forever, here is the final memory hook.
Just think of it like this. The SIPOC is the process's identity card. It tells you its name, who it serves, and where it fits into the larger organization. The flowchart, on the other hand, is the process's anatomy. It's the X-ray that shows you the internal structure, the bones, the organs, and how all the pieces are connected to actually make it work. Identity first, then anatomy.
So there you have it. Two distinct, incredibly powerful tools. They're not rivals, they're partners in a logical dance. One sets the stage, the other analyzes the play. So the only question left is, when you're done here, which process in your world needs its identity clearly defined with a SIPOC, and which one is ready for its anatomy to be revealed by a flowchart?
All right, so you've probably gotten familiar with the 7 essential quality tools, right? But let's be real for a second. Knowing their names is the easy part. The real challenge, the part that actually solves problems, is knowing which tool to use and when.
And that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, it's not about being able to recite a list from memory. It's about looking at a problem and confidently picking the perfect tool for the job. So, how do we make that leap from just knowing the tools to actually applying them like a pro? Let's get into it.
We're going to completely flip the way you think about these tools. We're going to shift our focus from what each tool is to when you should use it. And it turns out there's a surprisingly simple framework that makes this decision a whole lot easier.
This is the absolute key. If you only take one thing away from this explainer, let it be this simple sentence. The secret to mastering tool selection isn't about cramming definitions. It's about understanding the one fundamental question each tool was built to answer.
Think of it like this. The power isn't really in the tool itself, it's in the clarity of the question it helps you answer. A flowchart, a Pareto chart, a fishbone diagram, they're just vehicles, you know? They're designed to get you to a very specific, very crucial answer about what's going on in your process.
So let's just quickly walk through this. If you need to know what's actually happening step by step, you use a flowchart. If you want to know how often a problem pops up, you grab a check sheet. To figure out which fire to put out first, a Pareto chart is your best friend. And to dig down to the root of why something's broken, that's a job for the fishbone diagram. You see the pattern here? Each tool has one job, and it's driven by one simple question. Okay, so we've got our guiding questions, but what's the right order to ask them in? Well, it all depends on where you're starting from. There are basically 2 main paths you can take to get to the root of any problem.
So meet path A and path B.
Path A is what we'll call the process-first approach. You go down this road when you have a process already defined and you want to understand it and make it better. Path B is the data-first approach. This is your path when you're kind of swimming in data, error reports, customer complaints, and you need to work backward to find out where the problem is coming from.
First up, let's explore Path A. This is your go-to when you have a process right there in front of you and you need to analyze it from the ground up.
We're going to follow the green path here. Our journey starts with the most fundamental question you can possibly ask about any process. The logic here is just beautiful, isn't it? You kick things off with a flowchart to answer what is actually happening. As soon as you can see the process, you use a check sheet to ask, okay, where in this flow are things going wrong? That check sheet gives you data, which you then pop into a Pareto chart to ask, all right, which of these problems is the biggest one? You see how the answer from one tool leads you directly to the next question and the next tool, all the way down to the root cause?
But what if you don't start with a nice, clean process map? What if you're just starting with a customer complaint log or a list of machine errors? That is exactly when you take Path B.
Okay, now we're shifting our focus over to the blue path. This time, our journey doesn't begin with a process map. It begins with the raw numbers, the cold, hard data of the problem itself.
In this scenario, you start with the check sheet just to log what's going wrong and how often. Then, just like before, the Pareto chart helps you ask, which of these issues should I focus on? Now, what's really interesting here is that the flowchart shows up much later. It's only after you've used data to identify the main problem that you pull out the flowchart to ask, where in the process could this be coming from? It's a brilliant way to work backward from the effect to the cause.
So, we've gone through both paths. What's the big takeaway here? What's the one deciding factor that tells you where you should even begin?
The crucial point is this. There is no single correct order for using these tools. The right sequence is always dictated by your starting point. So the most important question you can ask isn't which tool is best, but instead,
And that's the question I want to leave you with. Think about a problem you're trying to solve right now. Are you looking at a process map trying to find a better way? Or are you staring at a spreadsheet full of errors? Your answer to that simple question tells you exactly which path to take and exactly where to begin.
I really hope this framework helps you choose the right tool with a lot more confidence next time. And hey, if you found this guide helpful, do me a favor and subscribe to Infinite Business Dynamics for more practical insights just like this. Thanks for watching.